All right, so for today's video lesson, we are going to introduce the next chapter, which is probability. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas break and that Santa was good to all of you. And we're ready to resume our learning in 2020 here. All right, so today's topic, we're going to introduce probability. So probability, just in general, this is the likelihood of an event occurring. Okay, just in general, the probability for different scenarios are going to be different, of course. For example, if we're talking about the probability of flipping a coin, the probability of it being heads or tails will be 1 in 2, right? There are only 2 outcomes, heads or tails. And depending on what we're looking for, if we're calling heads, we would consider that to be a favorable outcome. The probability of it landing heads would be 1 in 2. Okay. If we were looking at a 6-sided die here, the probability of rolling a 5 on a 6-sided die would be 1 in 6. And again, if we have a deck of cards and we are just selecting one card, so maybe we're trying to find the Jack of Spades, the likelihood of that occurring by just selecting one card from the deck would be 1 in 52. Okay, so we were going to continue to talk about probability throughout today's lesson. So in our previous chapters that we've learned, converting fractions and decimals percents was one of them. So we're just going to do a light refresher on these. So going from fractions to decimals percent. So let's just say we have 512 as our fraction. So to go from fraction to decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. So 5 divided by 12, I got a calculator. So 5 divided by 12 is equal to 0.416. Repeating. Okay, so now we've gone from fraction to decimal. Now to go from a decimal to a percent, we can multiply by 100. Or we can move the decimal 2 places to the right. Okay, so 0.416 repeating times 100 will equal 41.6%. Or we can do it this way. We can just move this 2 places to the right and we will get 41.6%. Okay, so I wanted to do this refresher. Sorry about that. Okay, so I wanted to do this refresher because in this probability unit, we're going to be going from fractions to decimals and percents. So I just wanted to do a light review here. Okay, so from fraction to a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. And going from a decimal to a percent, we can multiply by 100 or move the decimal 2 places to the right. All right. So now we're going to get into some terminology. Okay, so probability, this is going to be the likelihood of an event occurring. Okay, so just in general, likelihood of an event occurring. So remember, if we were looking at the probability of flipping a head on a two-sided coin, that would be 1 and 2, okay? So an outcome, these are all of the possible scenarios that could occur. Okay, and a favorable outcome, this is going to be when we are asking for something to occur. So the likelihood an outcome will occur. Okay, so if you're like, what do all of these words mean, Mr. Jones? Well, let's get into an example here, okay? So for example, if we're asking, what is the probability that a head will be flipped on a two-sided coin? Okay, so the outcomes of a two-sided coin will be either tails or heads. So we have 2 outcomes. Okay, and then the favorable outcome if we're looking for a heads, that is only 1 outcome. So the probability of heads is 1 in 2. Okay, and we will continue to discuss that as we continue this lesson, okay? So probability is the likelihood of an event occurring. Outcomes would be all of the possible scenarios that occur. And a favorable outcome is the likelihood that an outcome will occur. So in this particular example, the favorable outcome was flipping a heads on a two-sided coin. So the probability of that is 1 in 2. Okay, so let's get into another example here. So this is one right out of your textbook. So a spinner is divided into 5 equal sections. Okay, so right there, you should say we have 5 outcomes. Okay, if a spinner is divided into 5 equal sections, that means we're going to have 5 outcomes. The spinner is spun once, so we're going to find the following probabilities. And we're going to write each answer as a fraction, a ratio, and a percent. Okay? So the probability of spinning in A, so if we look at this, we know we have 5 outcomes. And if we look at this circle here, there's only 1 A. Okay? So we're going to write this as a fraction first. So fraction, if there's 1 favorable outcome, which would be the A out of 5 outcomes, it will be simply 1/5. As a ratio, we're going to write our favorable outcome first. So that is our favorable outcome. And we'll do a colon. And then what are our possible outcomes? So again, we still have 5 here. Okay. And then as a percent, we can just divide our numerator by our denominator in our fraction. So 1 divided by 5 will be 20%. Okay. So the probability of spinning in A as a fraction is 1 in 5. The probability of spinning in A as a ratio is 1 in 5. And the probability of spinning A as a percent is 20%. Okay. So now we ask ourselves, what is the probability of spinning a vowel? Okay, so our outcomes, we still have 5 outcomes, but we now need to look at which ones of our our numbers are vowels, okay? So we have an A, which is a vowel, and an E, which is a vowel. So now we have two favorable outcomes, okay? So two favorable outcomes over the 5 outcomes total, okay? So that is the probability as a fraction. Now the probability as a ratio would be 2, so favorable outcomes colon outcomes. And then as a percent, we can just divide our numerator by the denominator. So 2 divided by 5 would be 40%. Oh. Okay. So now the last question is, what is the probability of spinning a Q? So if we jump back up to our wheel here, we have an A, K, S, E, and a T. We do not have any Qs. So there are not going to be any favorable outcomes involving Q because there are no Qs present, but we still have 5 outcomes. Okay, so our fraction of spinning a Q would be 0 over 5. Our ratio would be 0 to 5, and our percent 0 divided by 5 would be 0%. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Because there is no Q on the wheel, that event cannot occur. Okay, so that's why it's going to be 0 out of 5 as a fraction, 0 to 5 as a ratio, and 0% as a percentage. All right. Okay, so we're continuing with determining probabilities. So a bag contains 10 marbles. So if it has 10 marbles, we have 10 outcomes. So what is the probability of finding these events? We're going to write these as a fraction, a ratio, and a percent. So what is the probability of selecting a red marble? So we can also write this as P red, and that is just saying what is the probability of solving a red marble, okay? This is what we will use to communicate our answers, okay? So we know we have 10 outcomes, and we're looking at the probability of selecting a red marble. So if we look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marbles. So that is our favorable outcome. So 6 favorable outcomes. So 6 red marbles out of 10 total marbles. Okay, in this case, we don't need to reduce our fractions. Okay, you can if you want to, but it would not be incorrect if you did not. Okay, so this is the probability of selecting a red marble as a fraction. As a ratio, we'll do our favorable outcomes first out of the possible outcomes. And then as a percent, 6 divided by 10 is 60%. Okay. So for our next question, we're being asked, what is the probability of selecting a red or a blue or a green marble? Okay, so we can write that as P, oops. So sorry about that. So what is the P is selecting a red or blue or green? Okay, so let's look in here. So anytime that we have an or statement in there, so selecting a red or a blue or a green, this is where we will be adding up our probabilities, okay? So the probability of pulling a red marble is 6 over 10. Or pulling a blue marble, so we have 1, 2, 3 blue marbles, so 3 over 10. Or selecting a green marble, so there's only 1 green marble, so 1 over 10. Because we have a common denominator, we can just add our numerators, so 6 plus 3 plus 1 is equal to 10 over 10. So 10 over 10 is equal to 1 whole, and that is equal to 100%. So does that make sense? If we are looking at our bag here, what is the probability of selecting a red or a blue or a green marble? Well, we only have blue or red or green marbles, right? So the probability of selecting a red or a blue or a green marble is 100%, or 10 out of 10, right? Okay, so we've written it as a fraction, as the 10 out of 10. We've written it as a percent, 10 out of 10. So now let's just write it as our ratio. So we'll do favorable outcomes on the left, colon, and then outcomes on the right. So 10 to 10. So that event is going to occur, because if you pull in a bag that only has red, blue, or green marbles, of course you will be pulling out a red, blue, or green marble. Okay, so the probability of not selecting a red marble, so we'll write this as P not red. So it's just saying probability of not red. Well, we know from the top that selecting a red marble has a probability of 6 over 10 occurring, or 6 to 10, or 60%. So we know that not red marbles, there are 1 green and 3 blue. So it will be 4 possible outcomes over the 10 outcomes. As a ratio, it'll be 4 to 10. And as a percent, it will be 40%. Okay. All right, moving on. Okay, so in this question, we have 6 airplanes are waiting to land at an air show. And we're going to show each of the following probabilities as a fraction, a ratio, and as a percent. Okay, so we have 6 airplanes. So we will have 6, oops. So we will have 6 possible outcomes. Okay, and we are looking to find what is the probability of a blue or purple plane landing first. Okay, so we have we have 6 possible outcomes, and we have 1 blue and we have 1 purple. So our favorable outcomes we will have 2, right, over our outcomes, which would be 6. As a ratio, we'll do our favorable outcomes first, and then our possible outcomes next. And then as a percent, we divide our numerator by our denominator, which is 33.3%. Okay, the second question is, what is the probability of a silver plane landing first? So probability of silver, we have 1 silver plane, so it'll be 1 over 6. As a ratio, it'll be 1 to 6. And as a percent, it will be 16.6 repeating percent. Okay. Hopefully this is making sense to you. All right, last example here. So the question is asking, what is the probability of spinning a C or a T on the spinner shown below? Okay, so we have a little hint here. So the C is taking up half of the circle. So the probability of C occurring will be 1 in 2, right, because it's taking up half the circle. Probability of A occurring will be 1 in 4. And the probability of T occurring will be 1 in 4 as well. Okay, we've just divided up this circle up here. So A has 1/2 of it, T and A both have 1/4. Okay, so that's how we get these numbers here. So the question is asking us, what is the probability of spinning a C or a T? So remember, anytime that we have an or statement, we're going to just add our fractions, okay? So the question is asking, what is the probability of spinning a C or a T? So now we can just add up the probability of C occurring and adding it to the probability of T occurring, okay? So C or T will be 1 over 2 plus 1 over 4. Okay, hopefully you'll notice that we don't have a common denominator here. That's okay, we'll just multiply that one by 2. Okay, so then we'll get 2 over 4 plus 1 over 4 is equal to 3 over 4. Okay, so that is it written as a fraction. As a ratio, it will be favorable outcomes on the left, and then colon possible outcomes, and then as a percent, 3 divided by 4 is 75%. So that is the probability of spinning a C or a T on this particular spinner. Okay? So your assignment and practice problems associated with today's lesson is on page 163 and 164, questions 3 to 10. Okay, if you need any help solving those, please let me know and I'd be more than happy to help you. Okay, welcome back and we'll talk to you soon.